Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming to our session today, Need for Speed, Uniting Dev and Ops for Exceptional Service. My name is Jeremy Cooley, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Atlassian. And today I'm joined by one of my really good friends, Michael Santos, who also works at Atlassian and is going to be demoing a lot of the DevOps capabilities in Jira Service Management. So thank you. We know you had a lot of options for sessions today, and we're glad that you chose ours. Before we get started with today's session, I just want to kind of to gauge the audience and understand what tools that you're using right now for DevOps. As you know, there are a lot of tools on the market right now that can be combined and integrated for DevOps. So just out of curiosity, how many of you are currently using Jira Service Management for IT operations? Okay, so about half of you. And then for your development teams, would you say that y'all use that Jira software for your development teams? How many of you would say that you use Jira software for development? Okay, so even more than half of you. And then how many of you would say that you, just show of hands, how many of you use both of those products together? Okay, more or less. All right. Well, that's perfect, because today's session is really about how you can integrate these two products, and especially these two teams, development and IT operations. So Jira Software, as you know, is our development team tool for agile software planning. And Jira Service Management is our ITSM tool, really meant for all teams. But for the purposes of today's session, we're really going to be talking about it for IT operations. And so for today's session, there are three key benefits that I want you to take away from this. The first one is that when you unite dev and ops on a single platform, in this case, the Jira platform, you really remove information silos because you're able to get all of that issue context across both products. And you're also able to do things like automation, user management, all with one platform versus having to go into multiple different tools to get the context that you need and potentially losing context. Another key benefit is incident swarming. So today we're going to do a demo where we're going to show a lot of incident swarming features that are in Jira Service Management where you can bring those development teams in. And finally, we're going to talk a lot about automated change enablement, so creating automatic change requests or change records whenever your development team deploys to selected services. So for today's agenda, we're going to break it into 4 parts. The first part is an integration fundamentals course. So this is going to be really great for someone who's brand new to integrating Jira Service Management and Jira Software or integrating your dev and ops teams. Then we're going to do a 25-minute demo showcasing some of the more advanced incident and change management functionality in Jira Service Management. Then we're going to do a wrap-up and resources section to continue your learning on this subject. And then finally, we're going to have a 10-minute Q&A for you to ask us all questions. And with that, let's get into the first part of today's session, which is this integration fundamentals section. So what are the fundamental things that you need to do to integrate teams in Jira Software with teams in Jira Service Management? So the first thing that I highly recommend that you think about is just using both products on the same cloud site. So this is really important because when you have both products in the same cloud site, you're easily able to share information between those two products without having to do any complex integrations, API integrations, or even apps in the marketplace. It's all possible just because you're on one single platform. So how do you just confirm that this is the case? So all you have to do is go into your Atlassian admin panel, and you're going to go to the products tab, and then you can confirm every product that you have for that particular cloud site. And if you need to add Jira Service Management or Jira Software to that cloud site, you can just select Add Product. So very simple. The next thing that is really important to know are the different user types and roles, especially those that are in Jira Service Management. So I have a handy chart for you all here to check out. So I wanted to go through these from right to left. We get questions about this all the time from our customers, so I just wanted to clarify how this all works. So the first thing are users that do not require a license at all. So these are going to be your customers and your request participants. A customer is someone that is sending a request to your help desk. They need help, and you want to offer them a solution. So these are unlimited and free. They never require a license in Jira Service Management. Similarly to customers, you have request participants. These are users who are essentially CC'd to a request. They have questions as well. They're CC'd to the request. They get the same notifications, and they can also make comments. So both of these users are unlimited and free with Jira Service Management. Then we have Jira Service Management licensed users. So there are two specific ones here. We have the project administrator, who is essentially the person who created your service project. So they're going to set up your permissions. They're going to set up who works as an agent. They're going to establish your help center. They're essentially creating the entire service desk for you. And then we have the agent. So these are the lifeblood of the service desk. These are the people who are actually resolving requests, resolving those incidents, and working with customers directly. But the really interesting role here that a lot of people don't know about is a role called the collaborator. And so this is a user of Jira software who is able to access Jira Service Management without needing a license. And so why would that be helpful for you all? So imagine that there's a bug with your website or an app, and you really need that developer to provide more context on a workaround or a status update on when the bug is going to be resolved. That collaborator can go into Jira Service Management and leave internal comments for your agents without consuming a license. They can also see the comments that your customers have left, giving them full context on the issue. And again, no license for this. I'm sure you're wondering, how do you do this? It's very simple. To add a Jira software user as a collaborator in Jira Service Management, all you're going to do is go into project settings and then people. You're going to add the email of that Jira software user, and then you're going to add them to the service desk team role, and that is going to give them access to the project so that they can view the issues in that project and do things like leave internal comments, watch that issue for updates. Maybe your customer responds and they want to see what the response is. You can do all of that without consuming a Jira Service Management license. All you need is that Jira software license. Another tip to keep in mind, similar to that, is that not only can you share users across products, but automation also works across products as well. So one example that I'll show in just a minute is this one. So imagine that your team got a bug from your customer, your website is down, and you want to create an automation rule that closes all Jira Service Management issues associated with that bug whenever your development team closes their Jira software issue where they're actually working on fixing the bug. So in this example, we can see that when a Jira software issue is marked as done, which is what your development team is working on, an automation rule is triggered that automatically closes all linked issues in Jira Service Management associated with that bug that your customers reported. It also will automatically add a comment to that email, letting the customer know that their issue has been resolved. So here you can see I've created a sample email that also includes things like the issue reporter, their name, their issue key, their issue summary, and even the agent's name via these smart values. So you can really customize this to really your heart's content. You can make it so that it automatically closes an issue only, or you can make it so that it even adds comments. There's a lot of flexibility here, but the big takeaway is that automation works across service management projects and software projects simultaneously. And then this last tip is more of an announcement that I'm sure some of you will be extremely happy to hear about, but boards are now available in Jira Service Management. So if you're familiar with Jira software, you're familiar with Kanban boards, well, we have now brought that functionality into Jira Service Management. This is an example of what it looks like. As you can see here, the board is organized into different columns. By default, it's going to be organized by to do, in progress, and done. But this is fully customizable. You can change, remove, add anything that you want to do here. And then all you have to do is just associate your statuses for your issues with the different columns. A really easy way to set this up is just by going to project settings and then features. And then all you have to do is turn boards on. And there is a support documentation page linked right there for you in order to configure this. So super easy to do. Perfect. All right. With that out of the way, I'm actually going to turn it over to Michael now, who's going to demo the more advanced incident management and change management features. As you're watching this demo, I want you to really think about how you can bring your dev team into these features that he's showing you to improve your DevOps processes. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Happy to have everybody here. Hopefully you can hear me. Make sure your headset's on. Everybody excited about boards, right? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to take you through some methods that we connect JSM and Jira software with some of our other solutions like Opsgenie and Bitbucket. We'll go through the demonstration, then we'll have some questions at the end. So really just to start, how many of you are actually leveraging Opsgenie or alert handling with JSM today? No? Some? So really, if you don't know what it's doing, is Opsgenie allows us to ingest alerts from your various tools and then do things with them. That could be alerting to your user base, your stakeholders, your whoever, notify them, and then maybe take some action against those. So I have a sample alert here that we're going to take a look at, our web store alert. This is maybe fed in by some tool that we've integrated with inside of Opsgenie. And then what we can do is take the data that was enriched by the alert monitoring tool and then maybe send it someplace else. So maybe I'm the person that's reviewing this alert. I got paged on my phone, or I'm using the Opsgenie mobile app and got a push notification, and I need to come in and acknowledge this particular alert. So when I do that, what it'll do is link over to Jira Service Management for us. So it creates an incident automatically. So now we can start maybe looking at why this incident is happening. Maybe it's something a little bit bigger than what I initially thought. And it's allowing us to push some contextual info from that alert into our incident. And you can see that on the description here. One of the things I want to point out is our service. So we define services for the things that our users use, and we can bring that information over to us, and that's actually going to help our incident person maybe do some triaging and investigative steps. So hopefully all of us are logging changes within Jira Service Management, and what that could allow us to do is actually record the changes that were tied to this service that may be causing the problem that we're having here today. So these are all the changes that we've logged. Again, hopefully your users are logging the changes, and we can maybe start reviewing maybe one of these changes that we just rolled out is the cause of this alert that became an incident inside of JSM. We also have a similar capability called Similar Incidents, and that will use some machine learning to actually look at the summaries of all the incidents in our project and start surfacing them up to your technician in the service desk to maybe see, maybe they're related to the issue. Maybe it's a bigger thing than I thought of this one incident. Maybe they came in from some other methods, the portals, other submissions through other alerts, and allows us to see all those related items that could be potentially causing this issue or be related to it. We also have our investigative steps. So if you're deploying out your changes or your configurations, say using Bitbucket in your pipelines, maybe that can be the item that is causing our problem. So I want to go back as the technician or the agent and look at what we actually deployed. And when we click on one of our deployments, it'll actually show everything that was pushed out and then give me the ability to see some info and then add it as a potential cause to our incident. So the whole thing is we're trying to find out what is causing our issue, what's causing the incident. And maybe now that we've done all these different steps, we now have a bigger issue than we initially thought. And that's where our major incident capabilities can come in, and we can start raising the alarm bells and start doing our incident management process to get everybody involved with this particular incident. So we mark that as a major incident. It's going ahead and tagged. And now we can start the major incident process. You know, if we all have a major incident process, that could be us swarming, getting everybody on a phone call, sending out alerts, whatever we need. But what we've done is actually brought over the responsible people from Opsgenie. So these responders, you can see that platform support's added. Ryan is added as a user. And where do we get that from? That's allowing us to see this, get these users from our on-call schedules inside of Jira Service Management powered by Opsgenie. So now I don't have to guess who I need to go to. We can have that picked for us automatically. So once we have the assignments, we can go and take a look at our on-call schedule. Actually, I'm sorry. We'll go to our conference calling first. So the conference calling capabilities inside of the Incident Command Center in Jira Service Management allows us to start swarming with our users. We don't have to go to a different tool. We just click on our conference call, we start the session, and then those responder groups, the assignees, the people that we need to get involved with this issue will get, say, an email notification inviting them to attend this after-hours conference session. And it's included with Jira Service Management Premium and Enterprise. So we don't have to go to another tool. We don't have to go to Slack or Teams or Zoom or anything else. We can leverage what's already here inside of Jira Service Management. And we can even assign roles to our users, note taker, whoever's going to respond, but we'll go and cancel back out of that and say we don't use the Incident Command Center. We want to use Slack. So how many of you use Slack with JSM today or with Jira? We can go and tie those together. So I go ahead and create a channel through our Slack integration. And now all of our responders, the assignees, they'll receive notifications. They can come into the channel, start swarming on this issue, discussing it, all without having to go to JSM itself. So what we want to do is meet your users where they are and make it simple for them to be able to interact with us during this major incident issue. This, again, could be your developers, could be the stakeholders, whomever you'd like. All right. If you don't happen to use Slack, you could do similar actions with Microsoft Teams. You'll just use the Teams option instead. So you got a couple options available to you. You have the Incident Command Center, Slack, Teams, Zoom. Your choice is there. Now, the on-call schedules, those are the people, again, that got assigned platform support and Ryan. So when I go to my on-call schedule, these are the schedules that I'm part of. They're configured inside of Opsgenie, and we'll look at how those are configured a little bit later. But this allows us to see who's on call and then who's going to be notified during that time period. All right, and we'll cover more of these, again, when we look at the configuration. But once we have the on-call schedules, I'm going to go and push this through because I like making sure my incidents and things meet my SLAs, especially in a demo environment. I don't want them open forever. So I'll go ahead and mark that as completed and maybe document some steps. And then we'll go on to the next stage. So that completes our major incident. We pretended that we resolved everything. But when we refresh our incident, our automation had created a post-incident review. So how many of us are actually creating post-incident reviews or even know what they are? But you should, because what that allows us to do is start documenting what we did, maybe what worked, what didn't work, and we can maybe do better the next time. And it's all about delivering better service back to our users. So we provide you with a template, some links back to the original incident, and this can go through its own life cycle as well, where we can have approvals, perhaps, on the post-incident review once we fill out everything. We can also publish this to our users through Confluence. So you have an option to export the post-incident review to Confluence. And you can even post it as a knowledge article if you want to be a little bit more open with your user population. Create it as a knowledge article inside of JSM's knowledge base, which is powered by Confluence. All right, so moving back to our incident, what we can do is move on to, actually, when we go back. All right. Yeah. So, all right, so now what we want to do is to actually take a look at the settings. Wanted to make sure that caught up for us. So how did we get the integrations that alert into Opsgenie? Opsgenie has a number of pre-built configurations that you can leverage, over 200 of them. We can go ahead and, as an admin, set up our integrations. So Opsgenie is available for, it's included with Opsgenie, or with JSM Premium and Enterprise. So our admin can go to Opsgenie, set up an integration. You can pick your favorite tool. Obviously, we have our Atlassian stack available. But if you want to hook up maybe Grafana, SolarWinds, something, you can go ahead and do that very easily from here. But say your favorite tool is not listed. So we have our APIs that are available. We have emails if you want to send out an email and integrate that way. Or we have webhooks. So basically, we want to have the info coming into Opsgenie. And if we take a look at an example integration, we can actually see how the different types of alerts can do things. So when a certain type of message comes into Opsgenie, for this particular case, we can have it maybe configured to create different types of alerts, closing them, acknowledging them, whatever you'd like. All right. So aside from the integrations, we do have our on-call schedules as well. We saw those within JSM, but we can assign our team managers, our team leaders, to set up their own on-calls. We can go through the teams and then pick a team here, or within JSM, where we saw earlier where I clicked on-call on the left-hand side, we're able to see those on-call schedules that I'm part of, and then click the View and Opsgenie button, which will then bring us into Opsgenie, where I can make changes to the rotations and whatever schedules and paths that we may have created. So again, set up any type of rotation that you want, add your users. You can create multiple levels of these, maybe based on time zones for support. Set up those on-call rotations so that we can notify the appropriate people when we need to during our incident swarming. Okay. If you remember, we had our chat integration with Slack or Teams, so there's a couple of things that we have to set up inside of JSM as well. The first thing is we have to enable that inside of Jira platform itself. So under Settings and then System, you'll scroll down to our chat and our chat tools. This is where you go and add in Slack, Zoom, Teams, and once you have it enabled here, we'll then go into the project to then tie it to the various service projects that we've created. So if we go back to the IT operations project where I was doing my incident, we'll go ahead and go to project settings, and then we can go to our Slack integration, and this is where we'll tie the workspaces to this particular project. Now, aside from Slack, and let me get rid of my little alert there, we had some things with similar changes or related changes and similar incidents. So those are turned on as features inside of JSM. So if we go to our project settings, we can then go to features, and then we can scroll down to our similar requests panel. Just flick that on in your features. And then if you want to turn on those posted incident reviews, you flip that on as well. And then once we have the post-incident reviews turned on, we're then able to go under incident management under project settings and then set up the collaboration options as well as the template that we're going to use for that post-incident review. All right. So just to recap, again, we focused on how we can have your data coming into JSM as an alert, then how we can swarm with your users through a major incident process. We then can notify your users or your customers through knowledge base articles with things, with post-incident reviews. But really, how this all ties together inside of the greater JSM world or Atlassian world is our services. If you remember, we had a service linked initially back on the original alert that became an incident, but the service is key there. So what we're going to do is take a look at that original incident that we created from the alert. And what we can do is configure the alert to, or rather the service, to show us some more information about maybe who's supporting it and its relationships to everything else inside our organization. So we'll jump over to our incident. And then under our affected service, we have our little service editor button, and that will allow us to see some information about the service. And what we can do is go into further detail by actually editing the service using our little meatball menu and clicking on Edit. And this is where we start defining who's going to be involved with this. The owners, the approvers, our responders, our stakeholders. We define everything about that service. And what this allows us even to do is to share through our newly released Compass product the same services that was talked about earlier. So we can make that all the common language. It's the same services that are also inside of Opsgenie, and that's how that same service that we had with our online sales was also tied in from the alert that came in from Opsgenie. Right. If we go back to our incident view, we can then take a look at how this incident kind of relates to everything. We like to call it the blast radius of what's being involved with this service. And we have our little services details button that we'll take a look at, and it'll show every relationship that you've defined. And not many people actually really eventually roll these kinds of things out with a configuration management database, but this is using the assets feature inside JSM Premium and Enterprise. So you'll define your upstream and downstream relationships between everything. It could be equipment, infrastructure, people, other services so that we can really see what could be maybe underpinning my issue during my investigative steps. So we can feed this data in from assets, and then this same service that we have listed here that's giving us data from assets is tied into, say, Bitbucket as part of our repositories. So you can set up deployment tracking with your CI/CD tools so that when your developers publish something or commit something, we can have changes being logged automatically for us. We can also turn on gating so that maybe we actually have to have approvals as part of that change instead of just rolling it out. So you can either set that as an enable or disable based on your repository or just your normal business settings. So the goal is we want to make sure that it's simple for your users and not a lot of extra effort from your dev teams or your operations teams. So we'll take a look at our repository. I'm going to take this incident number so that we can kind of link it to one of our deployments. So here's our online sales repo. What we can do is make a change to one of our configuration files. We'll pretend that we're the developer. We'll go and edit this, add in some new comments so it recognizes a change. And then when we commit it, we're going to take that same issue number, and that issue number could be a Jira software, bug, story, whatever issue number that you want, or with in JSM, it'll be the incident, and this is going to use smart linking to link those two records together for us. So then once we go ahead and commit this, it'll tie the pipeline and the commit to that the Jira Service Management incident, and then we can see how it progresses through its life cycle. So again, we can see the link is there. We'll go to our pipeline, and we can see this is going through the deployment stages that we've configured the environment. So we have test, staging, and production. Again, as a developer, this is going to hopefully minimize the impact that I may be causing to the environment or to our service. I'm not doing anything yet. It's just pushing those things through, but it's also recording changes for us within our project. So my developer doesn't have to go and log those manually. And then once it hits to the right configuration point, we're now going to wait for an approval. So we do a quick refresh, and we can see that it's pending a change request. So again, the developer doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to go in through any special rules. We already defined those for them. And we can now ask for the appropriate approval from whomever to authorize this change into production. Right? So the big thing I like to stress is that it's low effort. You don't want to add in extra steps for your developers because they may not want to do it. They may not be logging changes at all. Kind of gets them in the habit of doing it because we're doing it automatically. And then we can go into the change request that was automatically generated, and then we can go through whatever change process that you've defined. So you guys define how many levels that it's going to be, who has to approve it, when they have to approve it. The approvers don't require any really special licensing within Jira Service Management. They could be your end users through the self-service portal. Make them involved in the process. So I have my change advisory board team where I'm part of this, so I can go and authorize the change on this. But you define what those change approvals are going to be. If you want to add ad hoc ones, which I don't recommend, but you can add somebody to get involved in this. And then maybe once one of those people out of this list approve the change, it can then start pushing the rest of the commit through our pipeline. So we'll go back to our approvers, and I'm listed as the one person that needs to approve. We only have one person that is required out of the entire group. So the moment I click that approve, the change will commence inside of the pipeline and start going through its push. Now, the deployment could be configured to soak. You don't have to have it go out right away. We could maybe wait for a change window because it's production. But in this case, for demo purposes, we don't want to sit here till next Tuesday. We'll go ahead and have that pushed out. It's recording the results of the deployment. It's successful. And if we go back to our change, we actually see it's already marked as completed. Again, from the developer side, they don't have to do anything. Our operations teams don't have to do anything. We already configured JSM with the integration to Bitbucket to handle that for us automatically. So we had a successful change deployed right now, but we may also have some failed changes or other changes that we want to take a look at. So we start looking at our queues to make sure that we're on top of what maybe dev is doing to the various environments. There's our 3 changes that were recorded automatically by the integration to our CI/CD tool. Now what we can do is look at a failed change. Maybe one of the changes that we rolled out is the cause of that original incident that we started with at the very beginning of the demo. So we have a view for our failed changes. Basically, the goal is that anything that's happening to our environments will be recorded here and available for operations. When we were working through that major incident process, these changes could also pop up and surface to us, so that can help us with our investigative steps. Right, so a lot of things happening behind the scenes, so we can take a look at some of the configuration that we've done. The first part is inside of Bitbucket. So we go to our repository, and then we can go and configure the deployments. And we can see the 3 stages that we've set up here. In this case, again, you define whatever variables and stages that you want. But basically, in our case, for the production environment, we enabled gating for it, and then only allowing the deployment to proceed once that gate has been lifted. So you configure this for each of your repositories. The deployment gating is supported with, obviously, Bitbucket, as well as Jenkins, and it's available for our JSM Cloud Premium and Enterprise customers. So once we have Bitbucket configured with the deployments and the gating and everything, we can go into Jira Service Management to set up some of the options that we have there. So in the operations project that I was working in, we go to our project settings, and then we'll go to change management. Now, you may not have change management on your list there, because it's one of the features that you can enable for your service project. We already have it turned on, so it's available for us. And then what we can do is scroll down and see the various deployment gating and setups that we have for our deployment pipelines. And like I mentioned, you can connect this to other services, not just Bitbucket or Jenkins. You can also use Circle CI, Octopus Deploy, and GitHub. With the goal, again, working with the tools that you may have already today. But with Jenkins and Bitbucket, we can combine that gating options for you. All right, next, we also had some automation running. Jeremy mentioned a good automation rule in the beginning. So automation is a key thing here. We have an automation rule that's pushing our changes through to completed once the deployment has been done. So we'll go and find our deployment rule. And when we go into edit mode on our automation, this will allow us to see the various steps. So based on the trigger condition and some conditions coming over from the deployment, we'll then have different transitions. So if obviously it was successful, it'll go and deploy it, or mark it as completed, rather. And then if it was failure, maybe mark it as failed or canceled or whatever other steps that you'd like. So there's a lot of power and options inside of the automation. You can do a lot of other things with it. But really the next thing is, how do we make all this visible to our user population? Whether those are internal users, our stakeholders, our end users. So what we do is we have a lot of views and analytics available out of the box with JSM, starting with our queues. So we kind of looked at some of the queues before, but basically any data that you have inside of JSM can be surfaced up as you need. We can also take a look at some out-of-box change calendars. So those changes that we're pushing out, we can publish them internally to the calendar. We can also schedule through the calendar as well. So if we open up one of our existing changes here, click on Schedule Change, we'll then be able to view a change calendar here. But say our end users want to know when something is going out, so we can leverage our customer portal to give this information to them. I have a knowledge article that I created. This could be a change manager manually creating a knowledge base article and filling in stuff themselves. But if we're using Atlassian Analytics, we can then maybe create a report that's available listing all the changes and just providing whatever information that we'd like to our self-service users. Now, we also have the ability to use our out-of-box reporting. So we can look at maybe workload, our changes that we've submitted that are successful, the mean time to approve them. Maybe it's taking too long to approve these changes. Basically, we can create some data or get some data out of JSM and then even export it to other tools so if you can use it elsewhere. We also have a dashboard that's available. I like this because it's live data. You can share it with your other users. You can take some of these reports that you've created and make some nice fancy charts. And this is interactive, so I can drill down into it to see maybe how well we're doing at deployments, what changes were coming up, survey results from the incidents that were caused by our unplanned changes. And then we also have Atlassian Analytics for our cloud enterprise customers. Atlassian Analytics is available with a number of different products like JSM and JSW. And you can create really anything that you'd like within Atlassian Analytics. We have a number of templates available for you to get started. You can also add third-party data sources like Amazon Aurora, Microsoft SQL, Postgres to feed in data in addition to your Atlassian footprint in the cloud. And what we'll do is take a look at our change management overview, which is built using one of the templates. And what you can do is tailor this to meet whatever reporting data that you need. So you can add in new widgets, new charts, but the goal is sharing it. Share it with your users. We can set up users on a subscription basis to email out on a regular basis. And then finally, what we can even do is copy that link and share it through a knowledge base article, post it into Confluence and embed it as a knowledge base article so we can surface that data to those self-service users very easily, again, without requiring any additional licensing. So with that, we've taken a look at how we can combine really JSM and our Jira software users, how we can share some data, how we can tie into our pipelines. And what we'll do is we'll have Jeremy come back up and open up for questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, everyone give him a hand. I know 25 minutes of demo is a lot to go through, so thank you, Michael, for going through that with us. Let's see, pull these slide back up. Yeah,
there we go.
So we're going to go into resources really quick because we have quite a few really great ones to share with you, and then we're going to go directly into the Q&A portion right after that. If you have a question that you want to ask us, there is a mic right there in the middle of all of the seats. So if you have a question, just feel free to go ahead and go up there as I go through these resources, and then we'll answer as many questions as we can. We have about 8 minutes and 46 seconds left to answer questions, so we'll definitely go through that. The first resource that I highly recommend checking out is our product guide. So we have a specific product guide for integrating Jira software and Jira Service Management that's going to go a little bit more in depth than the fundamentals portion of today's session that I did. So you're going to get more clear definitions of the different user types and roles and what they can do. You're going to get some more automation examples. You're going to get examples of even things that we didn't cover today, like how to use fields appropriately across Jira software and Jira Service Management. So I highly recommend checking this out. We also have product guides for a lot of other features like analytics, automation, things that we've covered today that are also in here. This will be linked as a QR code in just a minute, so I'll have a slide for you to get all of these resources. The next resource that I highly recommend checking out is another webinar that we recently did called Jira Service Management for Software Development Teams. So this is really told from the opposite point of view of today's session. So this is really about how software development teams can use Jira Service Management. And it's going to cover some unique use cases for those teams. For example, how can software development teams use Jira Service Management to improve how they intake work and how that work ends up on their backlog? So it's in some ways very similar, but it also has a lot of key use cases that are completely unique to the software development team. So highly recommend this one. And then the final one is Forrester Consulting's Total Economic Impact of Atlassian Jira Service Management. This is a report from Forrester Consulting. This has a lot of great data points in it about teams, either IT operations or software development using Jira Service Management. So I highly recommend checking this out, especially if you're working in an organization where you're trying to champion Jira Service Management and you need a resource that's going to give you statistics on things like cost savings, time savings. I pulled out a few examples from here. 115 hours per month saved by IT operations teams, 167 hours per month saved by engineering teams, and then a 10% reduction in service requests and a 15% decrease in resolution time for teams that have implemented Jira Service Management. So highly recommend checking out this resource if you can. In terms of the resources I just covered, you can capture them all with these QR codes. So I will leave this up on the screen for a few seconds so that you can grab them.